I'm going to talk about technical excellence. And earlier when I was listening to Sandro's talk, I was like cheering and clapping. And then I realized, oh shit, I'm going to talk about the exact same theme. And that is a hard act to follow. So now I'm going to add some value by telling my own stories about the piles of shit and everything, and maybe have some concrete examples what you could do, because so that most of you are developers, to improve the situation about technical excellence. So first, I will tell you why and how don't we have it, why we suck at it. And right now I'm an organizational coach and also a kind of holistic manager in our own company. There's a CEO and sales managers, but I invented this role for myself, that I take a little bit care of everything, but not any silo. But I'm a developer from my background, and I think all the developers, probably most of you, have had these moments of revelation in your work when you have found out that the world doesn't work like you thought it would, and you cannot kind of figure out what is going on. And you might feel a little bit like Truman Burbank. You're feeling, this must be a reality TV show. This can't be real. Or you might even feel like Jason Bourne, like the stories that are told by my superiors and my organization, they might not be true. Or there might be something fishy about the organization. And one of the biggest moments of this kind of revelation for me as a developer was close to 10 years ago. I was a software contractor at that time, and we got a new project, new customer, and they had strict processes, and we inherited this system that had just been built for the last year. And one of the policies that they had was the test coverage policy. You had to have over 60% line coverage by unit tests, and they ran regular automatic reports about that. And their kind of idea about that was, okay, that's our way to high quality code. But when we inherited the code and when I looked at the unit tests, I couldn't figure out what they were meant to do until we came to the conclusion that there was only one explanation. So basically, the tests didn't, there were no asserts. They were just running lines of the production code to get the reports look good. So no good quality there with that policy. And I'm going to tell about other traditional management decision making and techniques to try to ensure technical excellence that don't work in my experience, and talk about why they don't work and what should we do instead. But first, let's run through really quickly, because Sandro and Martin and everybody has basically said what I'm going to say. What is this thing called technical excellence that I'm talking about? And if you begin with a quote, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Who recognizes that? Couple? Where is it from? Do you know? Yeah, one of the principles, yeah. And just like Martin said and Sandro, for me the examples of technical excellence are things like quality code, sound architecture, good taste automation and coverage, continuous integration, continuous deployment, clean code, things like that. And my kind of interpretation I found last night is quite different from Tom Gilp's, but this is what I'm going to concentrate. And craftsmanship is, I think, a good another word. But if you think about it in the Agile Fluency model by James Shaw and Diana Larsson, for me, it centers out the kind of the second tier, the deliver value, where you are not just doing Scrum, not just putting post-its on the board, but you actually have those engineering practices that allow you to deliver value in the market cadence and keep doing that forever. So, as discussed before, the effects of technical excellence for me, one of them is shorter time to market, and another is lower total cost of ownership of services and products. And I have to apologize about the slides. I stole it from one consultancy called People One, and I don't necessarily agree with the headlines, traditional and agile, but it was so good presentation if you don't take that into account, that if you just do a waterfall kind of, in a waterfall kind of way, you amass a lot of technical debt. But if you have technical excellence, have craftsmanship, you can keep the technical debt down, and then the maintenance costs and the costs to further develop the software are much, much lower by orders of magnitude. So in short, for me, technical excellence is building it right to maximize delivery potential tomorrow, next year, and on and on. Maximize the potential to deliver value tomorrow too. Okay, so the question is, why don't we have it then? What's wrong with us? What's wrong with our organizations? And what are the kind of traditional management decision-making techniques and management techniques to trying to ensure it? We already went to the first one, processes and policies. And that was my first example of the test coverage policy, and I already showed you how it can go wrong. But what other things there are? One of them is contract clauses. And another example from my past, at another customer, this is close to 7 years ago, they had another vendor build a system for them, and they had offered this kind of contract that, okay, we developed it, fixed everything, then we have 3 months of acceptance testing time, 6 months of maintenance time, this kind of warranty period. And the contract basically said that if we find defects in acceptance testing phase or the maintenance phase, we'll fix them for free. We don't bill those hours. And yeah, the customers was like, yeah, that sounds like really great plan. What could go wrong? But actually, because there were no kind of, they weren't interested in the technical excellence. What they built the system in a waterfall way, amassed huge amounts of technical debt. And then, when it came to acceptance testing and maintenance, they sure found a lot of bugs, a lot of defects. They fixed a lot of defects, yay, value for nothing. But in the end, the quality of the system was so bad that they ended up having defects after the warranty period. They couldn't produce any more features to that. So it didn't really work. Not a way to get technical excellence that time. But what about the agile way? If you have a product owner and he prioritizes by business value, makes all the decisions, that should work. That's agile. You should have technical excellence like that. Yeah, sure. Well, another example, and this is more recent, like 4 years ago. And one of my customers, they wanted to build a new service, and they made the backlog for it and contracted the vendor. They said, we have 15 months and these 6 features. And the vendor said, okay, yeah, we'll send a scrum team of 6 people and you provide the product owner. And yeah, we can do it. Sounds easy. But when they had been developing for like 3 months, they found out that, okay, we didn't realize that we have to do something more. In order to keep the quality up, we need to do some architectural work and have APIs and everything like that. And that wasn't in the original plan. And now our backlogs is bigger and even though we cannot really estimate that far, we are fairly sure that we don't get everything on time. So they debated and time went by, but eventually it came a time that they had to make a decision. Do we try to do all the features and cut corners, lower the quality, or shall we cut the scope? And what they did, because they were a Scrum team, they asked the customer's product owner. And who thinks that the product owner went to cut the scope? Please raise your hands. I'm seeing 1 hand, maybe 2. Yeah. And who thinks that they wanted the full scope, even though the quality would be much less? Lots more hands. Yeah, and you were right. Basically, the product owner says, I've promised the full scope to my organization. Just do anything to make it happen. And they did. They were like, okay, yeah. And what happened? They were on time, on budget, yeah! But actually, they had to hire another vendor to refactor the whole system for the next year before they could build any new features on that service. And that was the time they found out, oh, maybe it wasn't such a nice decision. So, based on these experiences, I argue, and this is no evidence, this is no substantial evidence, these are just anecdotes, but I argue that these kind of old approaches do not solve the problem. Processes and policies, contract clauses, business value prioritization. And for me, the important question is why? And for me, a good and working answer comes from Jürgen Appelo in his book Management 3.0. Jürgen was already in here on lightning talk and is giving keynote tomorrow. And that's because the traditional management techniques rely on extrinsic motivation. If we want to achieve technical excellence, we reward high test coverage as shown on reports, and that will lead to quality. That is our hypothesis in those traditional methods. And there are non-linear effects, just like Martin said, told us in the earlier talk about complexity. And that is because we are dealing with people, we are dealing with software, we are mostly in the complex domain. We cannot predict what happens. We cannot reward something and hope that it leads to that other thing. That just doesn't work. So, what is needed instead, in my opinion? For me, it starts, just like Jürgen Appelo says, with the new management paradigm, tapping into people's intrinsic motivation. And for me, Sandro was absolutely right when saying that you should hire for passion. But I think also that most of us have passion that you can tap into, even though you're already in the job and doing something. And if you can tap into that, you have no problem with those non-linear effects. But in order to tap into that, if you don't have the highest level craftsmen around, You need to nurture the technical excellence. And in addition to the intrinsic motivation, you need understanding. What is technical excellence? What is something like technical debt and how it affects your business? And everyone needs to know that. And you need to have skills to know what to do about it. And I was struck by Pavel's talk about collective intelligence, and I think that it's not enough that individuals have skills. The organization needs to have like shared skills. I've seen many examples where individual developers are like, yeah, I would know how to set up a continuous integration system, but the other guys aren't interested. That's something individual skill that goes to waste because it's not shared. And you also need autonomy for the professionals to make the right decisions based on their expertise. And also, as Jeff Sutherland said in his keynote, you need discipline. When you are panicked, when you are under stress on a deadline, you need to do the same things. You need to get better every day. And this is my friend Antti Leinonen, who's started studying or training acrobatics in adult age, and now he's making his life and career about that. So that's one kind of example of discipline. So these things are required, but it would seem like this is something for the management to take care of. How can developers support that? How could they pitch in? Well, based on my experience, I have some ideas. If you think about those things, motivation, understanding, and discipline should be shared by managers, business, and the developers, everyone. And there should be trust between the managers, business, and developers, if there are such distinctions on the organization. Many have still. There should be trust to enable autonomy for the developers, for the professionals to make the right decisions. And the developer can, of course, should bring skills and more understanding, more discipline, because that's the professionalism that comes to show. But how could developers support motivation and understanding of technical excellence in managers and business? And then I think we go back to the intrinsic motivation. You need to change your point of view. There's shared goals in the business. The motivation of the manager and business, you need to know that. And so that you can position the things that you want to advance in their language. And it's good when those things are shared. Some of the new organizations, I could say that when you have a structure like software mill, this is simple. This is simple. Everyone is a CEO. Everyone knows the goal of the whole organization. But for all the organizations, this is much harder. But a thing that you can find out. And if you find out that the intrinsic motivation makes no sense or is destructive or anything, then that's a really good sign for you to think about going somewhere else. And to reason, I think most organizations have these kind of stories. They have their own legacy systems. And you should use those stories and tell them time and time again, if you don't do this, this new product will end up being like that shitty legacy system that we have that is a pain in the ass. I think that works. So you might want to think, what's your cautionary story in your organization? Because I've seen organizations, our customers, that have found good dialogue between the developers and managers and business based on these cautionary stories. Actually, just the last one I told you, that changed the whole thing for one fairly big organization. But secondly, how to build trust between managers, business, and the developers. And one example that I have here, there are many ways, of course. I could use a whole speech talking about this. But one example that is about technical excellence is the question, who should define the indicators or metrics? I had the test coverage metric example, and it didn't seem to work, and for a sole metric that maybe wouldn't work in any situation. But what if the professionals themselves would discuss what they want to measure? What are the important things? I think that is something that should be in the hand of the developers. And by being strict about it, providing visibility to it, could be the start of building of trust. Okay, they really mean it. They are not choosing any vanity metrics. They are really showing where it hurts. They are really showing where they are good at right now and where they suck at this moment. Because I think in the end, code quality or things like that, they are in the end responsibility of the developers. That's just as Sandro said. So for me, it's similar than my concept that Scrum is micromanagement by the team. This kind of choosing your own metrics and being really strict about them. It's micromanagement by the team. But when the team is doing it, it can build trust. But there's one caveat. What to do if there's absolutely no trust or no way to trust, or you cannot do those kinds of things? And this kind of a sideway, but I would say that be professional. Do not be an order taker. Do not ask the product owner, does he want high quality code or low quality code? Do not offer the shortcut route, because as Sandro said, your career might be at stake. But that's just my opinion. And third thing, how to grow shared skills, shared understanding about technical excellence inside the development organization. And this is something that was mentioned by Jeff Sutherland, and I think most of you are familiar with. So let's conclude with it in quite a swift manner. Like in Spotify, I propose that you let excellence grow in circles and guilds. Build a circle or guild based around some subject matter that you think is important. And if you cannot do it formally, then you should do it informally, even on your own time. Brown bag lunches, anything. Because that's actually the way we started doing. We call these circles in our company Houston Inc. We started the coaching circle and the technology circle and the front-end circle, and we didn't ask anyone's permission, and we didn't use very much of our work time. We used some because we are a kind of easygoing company and a small consultancy. And 2 years later, right now, in our company, it looks like this. This is front-end circle is one example. We interact with the board of directors, they ask the front-end circle for advice. We train the personnel, we build prototypes for sales, we provide visibility to outside world, we do trainings and stuff. So something that started informally has become a formal part of the organization. And I'll encourage you to do the same thing in your organization if you think that is possible. If you don't think that's possible, then that might be another hint. I don't know. You judge it. So, to conclude, for me, technical excellence is building it right to maximize delivery potential. It leads to shorter time to market and lower total cost of ownership for your systems. In my opinion, the old approaches like processes and policies, contract clauses, and business value prioritization does not solve the problem of lacking technical excellence. And that's because they rely on extrinsic motivation. Instead, you need to tap to the intrinsic motivation of the workers. Ensure that everyone has understanding what technical excellence means and what effects does it have. You need to grow skills inside the organization. The developer organization needs to have autonomy, and everyone should be disciplined about it. That's how you nurture technical excellence, in my opinion. Some of the examples to maximize the impact that your organization can make with the things it builds. Thank you very much.